To the outtakes, yeah.
No,
Watch the outtakes. Give me the funny beats.
it's definitely all about the pre-show banter.
Yeah, for sure.
And the Benjamins. Somebody said that once.
I believe that was Sean Combs.
Sean Poofy Combs. Imagine how different his life would have turned out if he went with Poofy instead of Puffy. Think about it. I mean, as coders, we know how important it is when we name things.
Yeah.
Sean Poofy Combs would not have been a successful producer.
No, definitely not. Can you imagine, like, just like how his entire career would have shaped out if every time you said it, you had to say Poofy?
I feel like did you ever read those comic books back in the day, the Marvel What If comic books? It was always like, what if like Daredevil had sight?
That would be
pretty much takes away the whole point of him being a hero. He's just a guy in a suit. But what if Sean Poofy Combs was a thing? Like, what up? It's Poof Daddy.
Poof Daddy.
I mean, would that also change his other name to P. Diddy?
That's what I was thinking. Because he switched. He switched for a while. He was P. Diddy now.
He switched many times.
Yeah.
He was Puffy, then he was Puff Daddy, then he was P. Diddy, then he was Sean Puffy Combs. Now I think he's going by Steve. Wait, can we start a rumor? Can we start a rumor that in actuality Steve Kalabnik is Sean Puffy Combs?
I would believe that.
I'm in. That's a good rumor to start.
I mean,
you gotta start floating at the conference.
I'm not even sure it's a rumor because I honestly in its fullness.
I'm gonna tweet this right now.
And that's how rumors get started.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see.
Now we have to make sure that we like keep the rumor going on the conference circuit, like.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I
will definitely. Whenever I speak, I will bring this up, especially if Steve's in the room, even better.
Yeah.
On Evernote Hello, can you like make a note for Steve that is like his Puff Daddy?
Steve equal Sean Puffy Combs.
Poofy.
Poofy.
Poof Duty.
All right.
Poof Duty.
It automatically autocorrects to Puffy. Well, whatever. It's tweeted. The truth is out there, folks. The truth is out there. Steve Poofy Kalabnik. Oh man, I hope I introduce him somewhere now. Let's welcome to the stage, Steve Poofy Kalabnik. And he'll just be like, what? Which I imagine if he sees this tweet, which I know he does, he's going to be like, is PJ high?
You can't explain what happens in a random podcast pre-show.
Yeah. Yes. You can't go on about things that happen at 11 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday.
Yeah.
On a podcast. You don't know.
Okay. This is going to be recorded and it's broadcast live, and it's going to be recorded, and then I'm going to take the video. All right, I think everything is set up.
All right.
And that's
I feel like there's a lot of positivity here.
It's just very worrisome right now.
I'm sure it'll be all right.
Yeah, I think we'll be.
Got the last episode to like. The last episode worked. So.
Yeah. All right, PJ, do you know what we're doing with the?
Yeah, I read the scripty kind of thing.
All right, yeah.
So I'm going to say the word with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be a nice little fun intro. All right.
I added my bio, by the way. I hope that works.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Oh, nice.
That will be helpful. Yeah. we'll introduce you, and then you can say hi, and then we'll get started and stuff.
Okay. You sound so awake right now. We'll do this, and it's gonna be great. It's gonna be fantastic.
We have a really relaxed podcast.
I should apologize at the beginning, before we get started. I went skiing for the first time ever yesterday, so I am a broken human being right now. My entire body is bruised and sore, and I'm just I'm struggling to do everything. So if I trail off in my speech, it's because my hip is terrible. But
just things happen.
Just as a forewarning. All right, we have one viewer, which is huge. So I think we'll just get started now.
Okay, are you gonna play the intro music?
I could if I can figure that out, but no. We have big dreams to play the intro music. We'll add that in post.
Yeah.
It'll sound great.
Could we all just sit here like we have intro music? We'll just be like...
Yeah. You gotta make a bunch of noise though, so it's on your camera whenever the intro music's going on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Come on, intro music.
Yeah.
Let me get my shades on. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Do we even need intro music, or can we just do this PJ kind of riffing thing?
I have a guitar.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we can do that. Pull up.
My headphones reach. Get my Barry Manilow pick. It's Code and Supply, ladies and gentlemen.
That might
I suck
actually...
at playing guitar. That's the joke.
That's better than any intro I could have.
Yeah. We just cut that, and that'll be the intro from now on. So, PJ, you're our first guest host. You basically just wrote our intro music.
I do my best.
Yeah.
You bring a lot to the table.
Yeah.
I do.
I'm gonna read this little intro we got here prepared, and we'll get started.
All right.
All right.
Welcome to the Code and Supply podcast. Code and Supply is supported by our great sponsors. This month's sponsor is Deep Local. Building on a 10-year history of hacking electronics and manipulating the mainstream media, Deep Local is able to employ its unique brand of gutter technology to create engaging real-world experiences that ignore boundaries between technologies, digital space, and the physical world. Each month, Code and Supply holds free community lectures on software development in Pittsburgh, and this is our podcast. For a full list of our events, visit codeandsupply.co. I'm Justin Reese, here with my regular co-host Alex Shenoy, and this month we have our first guest host, PJ Hagerty, the community team lead at Engine Yard. And today, we're going to be talking about in Vogue coding. That's right, we're going to be talking about coding
with
style.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That went way better than I could have expected.
It's gonna be really great for the people that don't see the video and listen to it on iTunes. They're gonna have no idea what you guys are laughing at.
Then you know what? I think that that shot of you with the glasses on right there, that needs to be kind of like the placeholder for the podcast in iTunes.
Yeah, that would be great.
Just so people that aren't looking at titles can be like, what the hell is that guy doing?
It's going to be the new Code and Supply logo.
Man.
A stylized version of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like a silhouette with big glasses.
Well, PJ's our guest host because late last month he wrote an article called Ruby Isn't Dead, discussing how 2014 was the year of programming deaths and how things have fallen out of favor, including TDD, Agile, frameworks, and Ruby. And we're just going to talk about those things in general and what it means to be coding with style right now and all of that. We'll get, PJ, why don't you introduce yourself and then maybe introduce a little bit about your article and what you were thinking with it.
All right. So as Justin said, I'm the community team lead at Engine Yard. I am the kind of the leader of a team of people whose job it is to specifically go out into their respective communities. In my case, that's Ruby. We have a guy that does PHP, a guy that does general open source. And we go out and we reach out and we find out what the community needs, bring that information back to Engine Yard, then also supply the community with things they need, like, information on where things are going, tracking trends, things like that. The biggest thing that we do is go to conferences and speak. And Justin, that's where you and I actually met at the first Steel City. It was the first time I spoke publicly. You were there, and all of that long road led to now becoming the community team lead. The article actually came from the fact that I went to about 20 conferences in 2014, and I was kind of doing my retrospective look back at the year, so to speak, and I was looking at how many times there were mentions of, is Ruby dead? Is Ruby dead? Is Ruby dead? Let's have a panel to discuss where Ruby is going to see if it's dead. Let's do this and let's do that. And I was kind of frustrated because I'm like, here's a big, vibrant language. Things are going really well. It's maturing, and I would even say it's mature to the point where people are using it in production for major, large-scale organizations and their applications. And yet, suddenly, the cool hip kids are like, Ruby's dead. Can't do anything with Ruby anymore. It's like you could probably do more with Ruby than you can when I started with it 5 or 6 years ago. But people have decided that maturity equals death because it's not the new hotness. As you were saying before, it's not in vogue. So I decided instead of doing like my usual 2014 year in review, I would write an article about Ruby not being dead. And it was originally slated to be kind of a toss away because it was coming out the day after Christmas. Who was going to read this blog post? And it ended up being one of the most popular blog posts for all of 2014 on the Engine Yard blog. So it was kind of nuts the way it all happened. But yeah, it's just my feeling that Ruby is still a strong language. It's still important. It's still pertinent, and the community is still huge. So let's not put nails in coffins that haven't been built yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the show's theme is about coding in Vogue because just because it's not shiny doesn't mean it's not good anymore, and that seems to be what the difference is with Ruby now. It's not the shiny new thing. It's not people leaving PHP for Ruby. They're like it used to be. Now it's just okay. Ruby's there.
Now it's people are leaving Ruby for Go, or Ember, or Angular, or God, probably there's at least 3 people that left Ruby for Swift, and I'm sorry for them. Especially when the benchmarks came out recently that Swift is slower than like what we were using before Swift. But yeah, I think that part of it is an attitude of the individual developer. I think certain developers want to be just using the new hot stuff. They don't want to be tied down to a job where they're making software. They're really focused on the academic side, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's great to explore the deep dive, the deep delving parts of a language to get familiar with it. And I also support the idea of being polyglot. But at the same time, I think it's the way that we cast aside a language that's pertinent here. Just saying something's offhandedly dead is not, conducive to helping a community grow or helping a community sustain. And that's really the problem that I had with it is it's not dead. People are still using it. It's very active. It's just not the newest, hottest thing anymore.
Yeah. I think it's basically it's been sort of eclipsed by like this big, like Clojure has a community that's like sort of getting way more traction, and Clojure's like a nice language, but it's really like I kind of see it as the same thing. There was a response to your article, like, is PHP dead or is it just deader than Ruby or whatever?
Oh,
like,
yeah, Perl, yeah.
Or Perl, yeah. But like, I think about it as like the same thing as PHP. Like PHP is still used by a ton of people. Like, there's still a ton of websites written in PHP, and I feel sorry for those guys. But like Ruby is a great language. Like I spend most of my days now doing embedded C stuff, but I have like scripts that I write that are in Ruby. I have tools that help me with my C coding that are written in Ruby, and Ruby is a great language, and it's really gotten to a mature point. So I definitely agree that we shouldn't be discounting things that are just getting old. And that's kind of the natural life cycle. Like I feel like this happens to a lot of languages and frameworks. Like it reaches a certain level of maturity where it's like it's legitimized, and then shortly afterwards, people are like, oh well, now it's legitimate. Like it's almost like it's the man now, right? Like you went from being like from rebelling against the man to becoming the man, and that's kind of the same sort of life cycle.
Yeah, it's like the old kids in their records. It's like hipsterism. It's like, oh, Ruby. Yeah, I did Ruby before it was cool.
Yeah, yeah.
What did you do before that? Like PHP, but that's before it was like a major corporate tool. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I actually think it's the same thing. And you know, I've been to a bunch of PHP conferences, and they think the same thing that I'm saying right now about Ruby. Like they think PHP is still vibrant. It's still heavily used. It's a great tool, and I think that seeing what tools work properly for what job is really important. And part of that is not discounting anything. So like, if I was to pick up a project and realize that the best option for it was PHP, I would go with PHP. I wouldn't have a problem with it. It wouldn't be my first choice. I always try everything in Ruby first. But at the same time, like, I'm open to new languages, but I'm not going to put anything into production in Node because I don't think it's ready yet. And Node's been around for a couple of years, and a lot of people are like, bam, we're using Node. Everything we do is an Ember. Just because something has a .js at the end of it doesn't mean I think it's the front-end answer to all the things, if that makes sense.
And Code and Spy is like a largely polyglot organization, and we hold events on all kinds of languages. But at the end of the day, I'm a Rubyist, and like what I get out of these events is things that help me be better at Ruby. So I mean, there's a part of it where you can explore these new languages without saying the primary thing you work with is dead. You can learn a lot from what's going on, and it gives you this perspective on your regular tool that you wouldn't get if you didn't explore like that. And it doesn't mean
absolutely
abandoning Ruby just to look at these new things.
Right, and I think that's you hit the nail on the head there. You can go to any kind of and Code and Supply is a great example because it is a polyglot meetup. But I live in Buffalo, New York, and here we have kind of separate meetups, but we've done joint meetups together, and they've always been really cool in the fact that everybody's like, oh, I've never really thought about doing it like that with the tool that I'm using. So let me go and stretch the boundaries of the tool that I'm using, and that in and of itself reinvigorates that tool. Maybe just for yourself, or maybe you're actually contributing back to the open source core of it, and you're actually expanding the ability of that tool, whether it be Ruby or PHP or Perl or whatever, Python. You're taking it to another level because you're like, oh, I didn't realize I could do this. Now that I know that I can, I found a monkey patch or a workaround or something else, and now I'm going to submit a pull request and I'm going to make it better for everyone. That's what keeps these languages organic and alive, all of them.
And one of the trends right now that I think is pretty popular is functional programming, and I've learned so much from that, and I like functionally programming in Ruby, just using those concepts and bringing them back home. Just because it's not a functional language doesn't mean you can't use some of the concepts of black box programming and all of that in language that's not built that way. So
absolutely,
yeah, exploring is great. And I don't know, maybe Ruby isn't dead, maybe.
Right. Well, I mean, if you think about it, it's not just the language itself; it's also the concepts. Ruby, when it hit, and I mean, especially with Rails, which I freely admit I'm not a huge fan of Rails anymore because I don't build projects that need that kind of overhead. They're not that large. But even when Rails came about, Ruby really became a huge thing. People started to understand the idea of gems. You got things like RVM and Bundler for version management and package management. And now you're looking back at all these languages, and PHP was like we don't like Ruby. You stole all our developers a long time ago. And now they're like, hey, we've got Composer, and Composer's like Bundler. We've got these frameworks that are using MVC, kind of like Rails. And and Rails didn't come up with the idea of MVC. That wasn't new. The concepts of functional programming, they're not new. They're just seeing new life by people that are bringing them back and applying them to things like Ruby that weren't using them before. Jessica Kerr actually gives a great talk about how Ruby is not but can be a functional programming language. And if anybody's into functional programming and into Ruby, go look it up. I think it's on Confreaks. It's just an amazing talk.
Yeah, we'll include a link in the show notes to that. We'll find it and include a link.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you talked about MVC and like the good things that Rails kind of brings to the table, things that people get taught about. And a lot of people in the Ruby and Rails community are into TDD, but then someone like DHH, the founder or the creator of Rails, comes out and says TDD is dead. So, what do you think of other things that are losing favor in different ways?
I think that often David says things that make wonderful headlines.
Yeah.
And I saw the talk. I didn't see it live, but I saw the talk, and I think it was amazing if you really dig deep down between the giant headline of TDD is dead and all of. Can I swear on this show?
Sure.
Are we allowed? All of the fucks and bullshits and swearing that he does. And if you look at what he was really saying, and it's that you can't base your whole life on TDD.
Yeah.
Because I think we were reaching a point where TDD was practically a religion. People were like, "Oh my, you must write tests. You must have X percentage of coverage, and if you don't, then I cannot associate with you. It's horrible." And I think that's kind of what he was addressing. The delivery may not have been the best, but I think we all agree testing is super important. Testing is a must-have for any project that involves more than one person, that has any kind of lasting tenacity that's going to last more than 5 minutes or some sort of proof of concept. You have to have testing. But at the same time, it shouldn't be we're going to focus just on testing and the rest of the app be damned. As long as we have 87 lines to our 3-line method, 87 lines of testing, then we're great.
Yeah.
And not really analyzing the fact that maybe we're over testing.
Yeah.
I think that's what he meant by it. But I think again, there's other options. I think when you have a large project, you're working for a consultancy or a company, and you have a product you're trying to produce, you need to have a little bit of TDD. You have to have a little bit of BDD. You have to have a little bit of what my friend Bill Chapman calls STD, which is shame-driven development, which is the idea of writing just enough tests so that the next person that comes along knows you did it, but you don't have to embarrass yourself by pointing out the fact you're not great at writing tests. You may have a lot of conversations of different philosophies on what drives the development. It can't be one thing. It's a simple concept going back to don't put all your eggs in one basket. Make sure you can diversify the way you do things. Because I don't want to jump the gun. I know we're going to get to agile too, but it's kind of the same idea of if you only move things in one direction, you're not actually flexible. You're not actually able to deal with emergencies when they come up. So if I worked at a shop before I worked at Engine Yard where we made educational software, and we moved to Ruby just as TDD was becoming a huge thing again. And one of the guys on our team was like, "We got to write tests," and the boss walked right in and goes, "If I catch any of you writing tests, you're all fired. We don't have time for this. You have 3 months to rewrite an entire product that was written in Visual Fox Pro. Make it happen." So tests became not an important thing. That product still exists, so I won't say what it was called or the name of the company or anything. But if any of my friends who work there are listening, they're probably laughing right now because I don't think any tests were ever written for it.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's that kind of bad situation where someone comes in and says, "Hey, you don't have time to write tests. We need to fix this now." And that's where you get your monkey patching and your MacGyvering of code and stuff like that. to make it work, and then maybe you'll worry about refactoring it and doing it the right way later. But the concept of TDD doesn't let you do that. It's very inflexible. And I think that's really where what David wanted to say. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know the man that closely, but at the same time, I think that sometimes he gets up on stage and he says, what is the most incendiary thing I can say? Like, what's he going to say this year at RailsConf? He's like, hey, welcome, everyone. You know what? Fuck gems. Hate them. Get rid of them. I think he's running out of things to say that burn down the house.
Yeah, so I got the same thing. Like, I saw the headline, I watched the talk later, I read the thing, and I had basically the same conversation with a buddy at work, and I said, like, it was really interesting to me how that talk generated so much furor online. And I was like, if you just read what he said, like, nothing that he said was really, like, bad. He was just saying, like, be practical about how you're testing. Like, don't spend all this time writing this test that tests this some weird, really random edge case that you're never going to encounter again, because, like, that's a waste of your money and your resources.
Mm-hmm.
But people took it as like, oh no, look at what DHH said, which is basically how I view every single talk that he ever gives. It's like the subject matter is not nearly as sensationalist as everybody makes it out to be, and like what he's saying is really practical, or really, like, it's metered, but it's like punctuated with all of this like bullshit and fuck this, fuck that, this is dead, that's dead, we shouldn't do this.
Yeah, exactly. I think you know what it gets. I hate to say it, but it gets people to buy tickets to RailsConf just for the keynote, so they can see what the hell he's going to say. I feel like it's the one, like, even at RubyConf, which I have a little bit of experience keynoting. Like, maybe not everyone shows up at every keynote, but damn it, when he takes the stage, everyone who's at that conference is in that room, because they're like, what's he going to say? We're going to go with CoffeeScript. Oh my God, CoffeeScript, what is that? Why are we doing this? And it doesn't matter what, like, I swear to God, he could have to, you know what, I really enjoy lamb chops. He's a crazy masochist who hates lambs. Like, it doesn't matter what he says. It's going to be sold and marketed as, this man's insane, and he should probably be burned at the stake.
So maybe we haven't
He's actually a
misunderstood.
fairly nice guy most of the time.
Yeah, so maybe we have a misunderstanding of DHH's subject through his delivery, and maybe he's saying TDD isn't dead, dogma is dead, and it should be dead.
I think that's really what he. Yeah. I think that's really what he's getting at.
And that leads kind of right into our next gravestone, Agile. Dave Thomas wrote an article that he felt that Agile was dead because it had been taken over from its original intention of what they came up with when they met for the first time to write the Agile Manifesto. And I see, like, it's a different type of this is like almost kind of like the thing with Ruby earlier, when the man has taken it over, but it's a little different because it's also been co-opted a little in a way that they didn't intend originally. So that's just another way that something could die, I feel.
Yeah, I definitely think that whereas we were saying, Ruby isn't dead because it's evolved into a mature and more stable thing, Agile has actually kind of devolved into being a hell of a lot like Waterfall. Like, you'll get all the terminology surrounding Agile, like, scrums and teams and sprints and, all this kind of framing around it, but what you actually get is a very inflexible team working to the deadline of someone who's not on that team. I've seen it, again, several different organizations that I've been directly or indirectly involved in, where they say, oh, we're so agile. And then you say, that's great. We need to make this change right now. This new version of X just came out and we need to add it to the stack. Great. We'll put that in 2 or 3 sprints from now. It's like, you realize how inflexible you're being. What does the word agile mean? It means flexible. that's kind of the idea behind Agile, and I think that's why Dave was again saying, like, it went up, like, oh, great thing, everyone can do what needs to be done, we can get the main work done, we can be flexible enough to get the emergency work done, and still continue moving forward. And now it's more like, no, we will move in this direction, do not veer from that path, which is definitely not Agile.
So maybe, people, they wanted to be a part of something cool, something stylish like Agile. They took it to an extreme, and then it caused that original thing to just not work anymore. It's, when you add, these certifications and everything you can to something that's cool, and then that's, when it becomes uncool. It's not in style.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of like going back to like late '90s, early 2000s. Like, what was the, and you guys might be too young for this. Is my old man part. What the most important thing you could do in your IT related career was get an MCSE certification.
Oh man.
Which, yeah, which is a Microsoft certification, so that you could use like IIS. Like, it was like just absolutely. It was difficult to get, and you had to take courses, and like people worked really hard, but this was like your badge of honor. And now people do the same. They're like, man, I have Agile certification. It's like, what does that even mean? You have a piece of paper that says you took a course that says you understand Agile, and you can be a Scrum Master. That's amazing. It is kind of like an applying of that old MCSE idea to modern tech culture and modern work culture of, oh, this piece of paper means something. But I like to, whenever people talk about certification and stuff, I always like to look back on, like, I have a degree, I have a 4-year degree. I went to school. Again, I'm older. Like, that's what you were supposed to do, so that's what you did. But nowadays, like, I see a lot of programmers that are coming from boot camps or just doing it themselves, and they're absolutely stunningly amazing. And no one thinks to ask, oh, did you go to college? Do you have a CS degree? Because that's important. It's actually not that important. And in the same way, like, there's people that can apply Agile methodologies that understand the concepts that don't have a piece of paper saying that they do. And there's others that have the piece of paper. They might have been the bottom of the class, but we don't know. It doesn't matter. I think, Dave's take on what Agile could be and why maybe it's dead is again kind of the idea of there's an evolution in the workforce, there's an evolution in the way people do things, and Agile could have been one of the things that evolved with it, but it looks like it's going in the other direction of let's go back to the corporate. I mean, have either of you ever gone to a conference and had to wear a dress shirt and khaki pants?
No. No.
Would you want to go back to that? Because I've had to do that. I've had to do that, and I would never want to ever go back to that. Like, I'm a t-shirt and jeans kind of guy. I'm pretty sure that when I die, that's what I'll be buried in, a hoodie and my hat. Like, I don't want to go back to the whole, like, I have to wear a suit coat thing. And I think that Agile is going back to that, corporate cubicle attitude that we used to see in Waterfall when they adopted Waterfall. And I'm sure that when Waterfall came out, people were like, this is great, amazing methodology. And eventually everybody's like, this sucks, it's just owned by the man, and we need to move on.
Is it going to be a cyclical thing where, like the MSc or and now the Scrum certifications, do you think whatever is next, do you think this is just a natural cycle that this is just going to keep happening over and over again, or?
I would think so. I mean, even going back to the languages and TDD, I think everything in tech kind of moves in cycles. I mean, if you look at it, let's look at Rails, for example. Rails is built in MVC, and for quite a few years before that, MVC was like, maybe this isn't such a great thing. I mean, it came around like the 70s and 80s, and it was the biggest, most important thing in the world. Then it took a big dip, and then didn't come back around to 2002, 2003, and that's what built Rails out. And it's kind of like, oh, so here's an old concept that's being new again. Functional programming is another great example. Old concept, kind of abandoned, thought as being dinosauric, now making a huge resurgence. I think agile and similar philosophies are also in a kind of cycle where there's kind of like, creation, acceptance, adoption, corporation, and then we go on the downsword until we come back. And maybe it'll come back as a different form of agile, maybe it'll come back under a different name, but the concept itself will come back, I think. There will be a cycle, and I think there is in a lot of things that we do in tech.
That cyclical chart you drew is pretty beautiful. I think that deserves to be drawn up by somebody somewhere.
Yeah, not me. The best I could do is with my finger. If I picked up a pen, that would be maybe football shaped. It might be slightly deflated. I don't know. That's for another podcast.
Drawing with PJ. That's the other.
Drawing with PJ.
Oh, nice.
How not to draw.
And you talked about MVC, and the first time you said MVC in this podcast, I popped up in a new tab, and I searched for MVC is dead. And, of course, I found something.
Of course you did.
And it's written by Conrad Irwin. He's a really great guy. Conrad Irwin is the founder of created Pry, right? But
I just lost all sound for some reason.
Oh dear. Did you hit the mute button?
We can still hear you.
Or can we?
No.
Unmute now. All right, I unmuted.
Okay.
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you if I unplug my headphones. Let's try now.
1, 2,
Okay.
3. All right, sweet.
I can hear Alex.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
I can hear Justin. All right.
Great.
So MVC is dead.
Yeah, MVC is dead. And it's.
I feel like you could create a podcast with a once-a-week episode on what's dead this week. But I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
I mean, I just wanted to. I just, thought to Google it. And of course, there's something out there, and it's by Conrad Irwin, who's, someone that I really respect in the community. He wrote Pry, and he's VP of Engineering at Bugsnag. So it's not just like someone saying this. And of course,
You're right.
I didn't have time to read the article during the time that I popped open the tab to see what he's actually saying. But it's just kind of a proof of concept that there's always going to be something that's dead, and just we'll always be able to find the next thing that's dead.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, going back to my article, I thought the funniest response was that person who, and I know we have the link in there, who said, "Is Perl dead?" Well, not as dead as Ruby. And it was like, this is so it became so meta. I didn't even understand what I was reading anymore. But yeah, I mean, I feel like anytime someone with authority says, "Oh, X is dead," long live X. I think a lot of times, going back to the DHH TDD is dead thing, a lot of times it's the headline, not so much the news. And I think a lot of people believe that, yes, things will change, but evolution doesn't equal death. Just because things change doesn't mean a thing won't survive that change and become new and different and rise from the ashes, so to speak, and be an amazing thing still as soon as someone learns to use it in a different way. Maybe the problem is we get stuck in ruts. And we get so focused on things like what David was saying about TDD, and we're so focused on it that we don't realize the other possibilities or other ways you can take it, other things you can do with it, and therefore we're like, oh, this is dead. It's so not sexy. It's so not exciting anymore. Like, I don't even want to do this anymore. So I'm gonna go do behavior-driven development and Go, because that's what's exciting right now. I want to compile my code again, which, again, is cyclical. I used to compile code, and now people who are doing Go are like, man, compiling code is so cool. I'm like, yeah, I remember when we used to do that when I was in like high school. It was amazing.
It all reminds me of Portlandia whenever the guy just said everything was over and just everything is dead. And
Grunge is over, man.
yeah, and I just see like even like the new things, the cool things, like all the JavaScript frameworks. I see people that are already declaring them dead, and it's like this.
Oh yeah, Node is so totally dead right now.
I think I'm going to become that guy that any new technology that comes out, I'm just going to declare it dead.
You know what? I think the three of us right now, we should just create, somebody buy the domain name like hipstertech.io or something like that, and we'll just have a weekly article about what's dead.
I'm down with it. Or we can do isdead.io, and we can have subdomains that have node.isdead.io, and you know.
Ruby is yeah.
Yeah.
I like this idea.
So
and actually, it's like a dynamic subdomain, and anything you type there will just put up a page.
Yeah.
we just have a form letter, like
the internet is dead.io. Yes. It's just like it doesn't matter what you type in, any subdomain just comes up with a big yes. Written completely in static HTML3.
Ooh.
Ooh. So I logged into Hover, and isdead.io is $50.
Oh.
All right. Well, you guys have sponsorship. I just came to chat.
That might be a thing that our lovely sponsor Deep Local will be putting on into it.
Deep Local, like, definitely our listeners should check out Deep Local. They like some of their projects are really, really cool. Like, has anybody seen the Like Belt? You guys seen this?
No, I haven't.
It's a Facebook light like it's like an Arduino or something like strapped to a like a belt, and basically you go up to these NFC tags and basically like dry hump the tag and it likes the thing on Facebook.
That is a little weird.
That is maybe strange, especially if like someone wanted to like something I said on Facebook. I'd be personal space.
No,
Can you do this in public places?
I mean, there's a video. The video is hilarious. It's great.
How many people have been arrested for this so far?
I think they only made the one, so I think it was just like an internal thing that they did. But they've done some cool stuff.
We'll have to put that in the show links. I googled it, and it looks disturbing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to like it, but I'm also afraid.
I'll never like anything again. Who knows what's been liked by that?
Do you know where you're liking things these days?
If you have that mental image every time you go to click the like button, you're probably going to like fewer things on Facebook.
You're just gonna really kind of think about what you like.
Yeah, to be honest, if it weren't for my mom and grandma, I probably wouldn't even be on Facebook at this point. But
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of things being dead, like seriously, I was sitting. My kids were on Christmas vacation, holiday vacation a few weeks ago, and so my dining room and my living room are pretty much the same room. It's one long room, and my wife and I are sitting there, and she's like, "Oh, did you see what so and so said on Facebook?" And we just hear Katie and Ian in the living room. They're playing Dokapon Kingdom or something, and Ian just says, or no, I'm sorry, it was Katie. He goes, "Do people still use Facebook?" And Ian just looks at her dead serious. She's 12. She's 13 today, but she's 12. He's 14. He just looks at her and goes, "Yeah, people like mom and dad's age." And I was like, "Wow, Facebook, you had a good 10-year run, but you're done now."
Over.
Yeah. Well, so then, of course, I started a conversation. What do kids use these days? They use Instagram. And if you think about it, Instagram is exactly what Facebook was when we all started on Facebook. It is a status and some pictures.
Yeah, and it's simple too. That's I actually stopped. I'm still on Facebook, but I don't like check it very often. I'm on Twitter and Instagram like almost exclusively. That's where I talk to all my friends and like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, actually, I got my job at Engineer, my initial job in support, when I started there 3.5 years ago, from a tweet that I responded to and sent an email in, and that one thing led to another. And I feel like that's not an uncommon story. Now, if I was to say, you know, my parents or my grandparents, like, hey, so let's say you randomly see something on the street and you pick up the phone and call someone and suddenly you have a job. What are the chances that happen? They'd be like, that's not something that happens. And that's essentially the exact same thing. I started talking to a stranger. From that, I've had a job for 3.5 years. And
Yeah.
that's just not the way things were done back then.
And we're probably behind the curve. You know, I bet you Katie and Ian, they probably even think Twitter is dead, and now it's all about Snapchats and Yik Yaks.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh my God, yeah.
So, I mean, just another cycle, another deathly cycle.
It is. It is. I mean, because if you think about it, like Yik Yak and even Snapchat to a degree, and what's the other one? They love Kik and Uvu. Like, and what are these things? But essentially, the AOL chat rooms that we all used when we were kids, hell of a lot safer, because you can only talk to certain people. But you know, essentially, they're doing group chat. That's what they're doing, and that's, you know, a private AOL chat room. That's IRC.
Yeah.
You know, this kind of feeds into that too. Like, everybody went crazy when Slack came out. Slack HQ came out, and they're like, "Oh my God, Slack is crazy! You can talk to all these different." It's basically IRC.
Yeah. It's a glorified
IRC for your
IRC.
organization.
Yeah.
So this might be like a really fascinating way to wrap up the show is that the concept isn't dead.
It's not at all.
Just the face is dead, and it's
And I think that's the key.
and like we keep going back to what we love, and it's immortal. IRC is immortal is the lesson of today's show.
I think you need to rebrand the title.
I think that we see that there's cycles to everything, that things go away and they die, but you know, in the end we come back to the same ideas, and it's just a rebranded version of the same idea. Even with languages, languages are so similar to each other, even 20 years apart in creation. Small things change, but you know, the concepts are still the same, and we keep coming back. That's all I.
It's a great ending to the show.
This is beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, we try something, we take the best parts of it, sift them out, and then it comes back as something new, but it's really very similar to the same, and that's basically. I'm sure at some point we'll reach the singularity. That's when all of these things will have their perfect form.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's for another show.
Yeah. That's for isdead.io.
The singularity is dead.io.
No, it's the only page that serves no.
All right. Well, I'm gonna say thank you to PJ for joining us and guest hosting.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Blast having you, and we got an intro song out of you and all kinds of stuff. PJ, do you got anything that you'd like to share with people before you sign out? Maybe your Twitter and web or your domain or whatever.
Oh yeah. So my Twitter is pretty straightforward. It's not straightforward. That was a lie. It's my Twitter is it's Spleenic, ASPLEENIC, and that's because I don't have a spleen. But that's for a whole other show. Justin, I think you know this story. I think I told you this story, but it's a long story, and we don't have time for that right now.
I don't think I've heard the story, so I'm gonna have to have you back.
All right, so yeah, all about people with no spleens. Yeah, I have like an about me page, just like about.me/PJ Hagerty. I'm on the Engine Yard blog all the time, and you know, my email is pj@engineyard.com. So if anybody has any questions, wants to find me or blow me up for saying things aren't dead, that's cool. It's totally fine. And I travel all the time, so watch my Twitter. I'll tell you where I'm going to be. If anybody wants to hang out. Because one of the things that's not dead is Ruby Karaoke. Ruby Karaoke is alive.
Alex, how about you?
Yeah, you guys can find me at Alex Shenoy on Twitter, and also alexshenoy.com.
Great. And I'll sign off the show. Justin X Reese on Twitter. X as in X-ray vision. I know sometimes it sounds like an S, so I like to say X-ray vision. And of course, you can follow all the things that are happening with Code and Supply on at Code and Supply, or codeandsupply.co, or the Code and Supply meetup, or the Code and Supply YouTube, or the Code and Supply podcast. Just like a meta reference. I'm telling you to check out the Code and Supply podcast on the Code and Supply podcast. Thank you for listening, and hope you'll join us next month. Bye.
Oh yeah, let me get my gigantic sunglasses back on. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Now we're cooking with gas.
Yeah.